Yahoo! Prof here. And today we have something special for you, actually special for me. And it's not this refreshing Coke Zero, not sponsored, because I can't get the label straight. You know, still not sponsored. What we have here today is the solution to all of my recent GPU worries. That is EVGA, as you can see there, giant RTX branding, specifically the horrible, why would anybody ever want this, according to so many YouTubers, 3080 Ti. And it's specifically the EVGA FTW3 Ultra. Basically the one I would want if I were to have it. I mean, it could be in the hybrid or even preferably the hydro copper version for me. But you can make this one that if you want. So there is a story behind that. But before we get to that, I think it's time. I got myself a little drink here. Get some refreshment. It's good. Alright, let's get our camera in a little bit closer here. So, that there. So right here's the solution to my broken 2080 Ti. Not that I'm not going to get that fixed, I still am. It's over at NVIDIA right now. But if you guys don't follow me on Twitter, you should. Because you would have heard or seen the helicopter I had in my computer for about a week there, because NVIDIA sent over a broken, refurbished 2080 Ti that had a bad cooler on it. So it sounded like I said, it sounded like I had a helicopter in there. Unpleasant to be in the room, and until I fully pulled it out, I did not realize how loud that thing was after I was in there for a couple days. So yeah, double check your cards when they come back from any RMA service. I've had plenty of trouble recently with Corsair, actually. Not too much I can do since it's a documentation issue, but I might be staying away from their products for a while because they've made it so much trouble. Haven't really actually had great luck with a lot of their products lately anyway. Cases might be one exception, but especially for their AIOs, I think we're staying away for a while. But on the note of the 2080 Ti, it came with a bad fan, and then it came with VRM and memory temps over 100C. Yeah, so that crazy stuff that you were seeing about the 3090, I was having with a 2080 Ti. I think it's because whoever checked that thing off saying it was good, not good. So that's why I'm so happy about this 3080 Ti, is it took a weight off my shoulders. I was worried that with the GPU shortage, NVIDIA might not even replace my 2080 Ti, because I've heard of 30 series cards just being refunded by manufacturers. So they were replacing it. They're going to replace it a second time now, because they sent me a bad one. Whoever did the testing on that refurbished card had to be blind and deaf, because you didn't hear the card going, and you didn't see the temps that are crazy high. Even they were like, yeah, it's not supposed to be that high. But yeah, this takes the weight off my shoulders right here, because now I don't have to worry about how long that takes. Lately, Frozen Slate's been nice. I still have his old 1080 that's in there, but technically that doesn't run my new monitors correctly. It can only run 4K 128-bit, no HDR, whereas my three new monitors that run off my main card are 4K 144 10-bit HDR. And you need DisplayPort 1.4 for that to happen, and a GTX 1080 just doesn't do that. So, I mean, it was running the monitors, but even then I was kind of staying away from using it just because it just wasn't the performance I was used to, because I've had a 2080 Ti for, I think, about 3 years almost now. So, let's get this 3080 Ti. Oh, I forgot to go into how I got this thing. I was on the pooper, as any good story always starts, and it was on the day of the 3080 Ti launch. I assumed they'd all be sold out, and wouldn't you all? However, I was browsing the Newegg app, and it asked me, "Hey, do you want to join the whatever that thing's called, the lottery, the shuffle, Newegg Shuffle?" And I'm like, sure, if it's still available, I'll do it. So I did. There were like 8 models of 3080 Ti in there. I just selected all of them. I'm like, I'm not gonna win this anyway, but I'm taking a crap. You know, what else can I do when I take a poop? You know. So I filled it out, and they're like, we'll email you at like 2 o'clock, or 4 o'clock, or I don't remember, something like that. And I'm expecting, because they'll send you emails like, "Oh, you didn't win. Sucks to be you." I was expecting one of those emails. But turns out, no. I get a text message saying I've won, and I'm like, oh, okay. So it's gonna be like an MSI or a gigabyte or, something I don't want. So I'll just, find somebody who does want it. Because like, if you have a chance to buy this, even though it's a 3080 Ti and a card that's horrible for the market, that's dumb and blah 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 blah. It's not, by the way, in my opinion, and not just because I got one. It ended up being the card I would actually want if I bought it myself, which is why I now own it, and that is the FTW3 Ultra. Why specifically the FTW3? Because that has the additional temp sensors for the VRMs, the memory, so you can monitor, especially if you're like me and you do overclocking. You want to make sure, because usually a GPU only tells you if the core is cool, and that's what all the fans go off of. UGA, with the first ACX cooler design, was the first ones to make it where one fan cooled the GPU and the other fan went off VRM temps. Because I've actually had cards bake themselves, and you'd be wondering why the heck these things are crashing. Because core temps are fine. Like, they're even like slightly balmy. And it turns out it's all because VRMs were just cooking themselves. Because there's a single cooler and the VRMs are at the front of the card. Like, lined up on that card specifically. So yeah, that's why you want the FTW over their other cards, is because they have all these additional sensors. It's kind of like the older Sabertooth boards from Asus, where you had temperature sensors all over the board, and you could select which one you wanted certain fan headers to go off of, stuff like that. It's especially nice when overclocking, so you make sure you're not cooking things. Now, if you're not doing especially when you're not doing like a full water block or something like that. But this is, if I were to get one, the card I wanted, and that's the card I was allowed to buy from a Newegg Shuffle. And I was shaking, just in shock, as much or more than when I pulled this guy here. That's a shiny Charizard from our Pokemon polls, Shining Fates. I was not even expecting that whatsoever. But that was an awesome pull. Amazing card. Same thing for giving them $1,400. Like, come on, really? Like, it's sad that I won a lottery to give somebody a bundle of cash, But that's the state of the market now, sadly. What you gonna do? So let's take a look at this thing. So I got a GeForce installation guide. I got 20% off their XR1 capture card. Not gonna use either of those. If you guys want that discount code, hit me up. Let me know. In the front here, we have important notice. This includes a retention bracket for attaching to some select chassis. QR code below. I'm guessing when they mean select chassis, this is for pre-builds, so that when you ship them, because this card is so freaking massive, you don't bend or break your case or the card. Now we'll get into why I don't think this is bad for the market. Like, some people saying it's a complete ripoff for gamers and bloody. Okay, gotta remember, 3080 Ti, guys, is not an upgraded 3080. It's a downgraded 3090. It is basically a 3090 with half the VRAM. The issue with 3090 is there was VRAM on the back that was overheating. That VRAM, gone. Also with the 3080, there is the issue of these, I don't know if they're VRM. I don't remember exactly what they are. It's been a while since we had to look at Preston's 3080. The FTW3, EVGA knew about the issue before shipping this card in the 3080 variant. So it never had that issue. Never even had a chance to. It was a bit more delayed, but they knew about it and they solved it before it hit the store shelves and stuff like that. Which you gotta appreciate from as a consumer. They also fixed with the 10 series cards. They had their nice their early FTW cards, and they went to the first gen ACX with the 10 series cards. They allowed you to either get the replacement thermal pads yourself, or for a fee upgrade to the ACX card from the standard FTW card, which then got you the additional, like the independent fan control and the additional temperature monitoring. To be truthful, if you can buy an EVGA graphics card, I would. Now in this, like normally if we're not so stressed with limitations on supply, I'd always tell you if you can. I mean, I've bought EVGA. My 8800 GTX or GTS was an EVGA card. I think I had a 70 something hundred as well before that. But realistically, when I built my computer for Windows Vista, for DirectX 10, that was like my first from scratch up, not upgraded, pre-built, not modified computer, not parts from other people. I built that thing from the ground up. That used an EVGA card. Previously, I did have some Asus cards and some other ones that I bought off other people, and literally best customer service I've ever had between their forums and when I have had to RMA things. I ran SLI. I don't know. I think I borrowed 9000 series, but then 200 series and newer. Starting with, I had a GTX 260 Core 216 classic card. Luke from Floatplane, X Slick from Linus Tech Tips. Ran that. He's talked about the card before. Well, the thing was a fucking banger. Ran that in SLI, then 460s. There were two different types of 460s with different RAM speeds and amounts. I think it was the 1 gig variant that had the faster one, and it still had the blower fan. That was while everybody was going to the axials. But and then once I had issues with my 670s, and EVG actually paired. They replaced them with 770s, and they paired them before sending them to me. Like, made sure they ran in SLI properly before sending them to me, because some of the issues I was experiencing with those 670s were specifically in SLI. And I mean, like, I'm sorry, but like, whereas the other way with Gigabyte, they spent 3 months to get me a replacement for I had a 970 ITX version. Finally, 3 months later, and 3 months and change later, they ended up sending me a 1060 ITX variant after a lot of trouble on my end. So let's say those two experiences are vastly, vastly, vastly different. And that's why, whenever possible, I will buy EVGA. I will select the guys over to EVGA. Jacob over there is cool. A bunch of other guys are cool as well. They do a good job interacting with the community. They have Precision X, which works. MSI Afterburner is the only thing comparable, and I really do think Precision has always been less clunky, let's put it that way. Even though at one point they were basically based on the same thing. So let's get all this plastic off here. This is going to suck. So much plastic. But yeah, so if there was a card I was going to run myself, it's usually a reference card in the past because of water cooling. I've been water cooling GPUs ever since the 980s I had an SLI, I believe. That was my first time I did like a partially water cooled build. Yeah, because before the 980, it would have been those 770s, and I never got blocks for those. I had blocks for the. I guess I had the 680, the 670s. What my 670s were 670 FTWs, which were actually just 680s PCBs. The reference 670 did have a different PCB than the 680, but it was the 670 was still a cut down 680, so a lot of higher end 680s like the FTW just used the 680 PCB. So I did have blocks for those. That too, I believe, was also just a graphics loop. I'd have to look back. I know I ran those on air for a while as well. I did never get blocks for the 770s. 980s I bought on launch, and those were, I think, technically SC models. So EVGA SC models, but they had a reference cooler. So it's essentially back in those days, right out of the gate, and you still see that sometimes nowadays. But right out of the gate, all the cards that come out generally, even if they come shipped with higher overclocks, were all the same as if you bought the NVIDIA one, usually, because that's all that was ready on launch back in the day, especially with like the 980. Sometimes when you get to some of these, like a 1070 Ti, those might be ready because like we already had 1080s, so they know how, like, it's the same cooler, rinse and repeat, you know. But when the first one comes out with the new cooler designs, usually those are not available on launch. And I am already seeing an issue with this card. And I'll have to see what I have to remove in my case to make it fit. But this is a 3-slot card. I mean, it won't be once I water cool it. But we're going to have to take out some cards, I think, in my system, because my main desktop is full. Every slot is full in order to make it fit. And I really hope it's not my 10 gig Ethernet, if you know what I mean. Much, much nicer to run between my server and my desktop with 10 gig Ethernet. And I will say, though, that these fucking labels, I just cut my nails today. I'm gonna have to get a spudger or something. Be right back. We got some spudgers. There we go. This flexible blade one worked pretty well. Yeah, so that's how I got this, guys. I wasn't waiting in a line. I wasn't even expecting to get one. I just kind of like half-ass entered a Newegg Shuffle and ended up getting the exact card I would have wanted. And then, of course, was in shock and awe after I got that text and stopped what I was doing at work, because I don't know how long those last. It's not for that long that those carts last, essentially. And made sure my order went in for this bad boy. They still have... I'm just gonna switch to OC right away, because who runs these, the FTW3 Ultra on normal, please, right? We can worry about benchmarks once I overclock, or not overclock the thing, water cool the thing. But I really don't want to have to go in and out of my desktop upstairs once I get this in there. For now, I just want to actually game, because I haven't played like Call of Duty Cold War or anything heavy like that in weeks now because of the 2080 Ti being down. It'll be nice to be able to pop this in there and just let her rip, you know? Be able to play whatever I want. So they did fix the back end here. It's no longer red, like that red stripe. However, the backplate, as you saw with Frozen Slate's 3080 FTW3 hybrid, still has the red one. Now we fixed his. It was cut out on a Cricut. We made like a little thing to cover this up. I'm probably not gonna do it with mine because mine's gonna have a water block on. So if you guys have any suggestions on brands to go with, in the past I usually went with EK, and I'm either gonna have a 1080 or a 1070 Ti in the build with this as my secondary GPU. Depends on which one just ends up going in there. That's going to be an EK block, so I'm siding with EK for now, but that is the older style EK, so technically it wouldn't even, like if I wanted to use a terminal or something, I don't think it would necessarily fit. And that's why I went with ElfCool. Also, EK for the 20 series they did not have blocks on launch, whereas ElfCool did. Normally, EK always has stuff on launch. I know some of the EK people left to go do the stuff over at Corsair, if I recall. So maybe it was because of that some of the stuff was delayed. I bet you I forgot to pull off plastic off this PX1. Supposedly that's why there was this red here on the other end, was because of the McLaren P1. And if you notice, it's a PX1, so they took some design cues that looked exactly like the back of that McLaren. Yeah, just make these as just not stand outy as possible, in my opinion. But it's one beast of a card. That is definitely a 3-slot, and like I said, I might very well, I don't remember the exact layout of my case, but the 10 gig Ethernet might be butting up right up against my my graphics card, where my 2080 Ti was. So temporarily, that may need to get pulled out, which is going to kind of suck. But the new server isn't done yet. It's over here. So, and realistically, the old server's performance isn't that great right now anyway. So it might not be too bad. And luckily, nothing will have to go from the current desktop to the new server, at least initially. And here's Hamlet. He's checking out what's going on. What's going on, Hammett? Yeah, you want to know what's going on that doesn't involve you, don't you? Yeah, well, we got this 3080 Ti FTW3 from EVGA here. And that's going to go right in the computer. Yeah, buddy. Alright, guys. Well, I'm going to go pop this in the system upstairs, and we'll resume with that. We're back upstairs, and I got the headlamp on, as you guys know why. We're putting in the RTX 3080 Ti. That giant bar of RGB you see there. The only bar of RGB turned on in my system, because I haven't bothered to turn it off yet. Since once it has a water block, it'll be off anyway, because it won't be there. One downside, I guess, here's the 1080. This was Frozen Slate's 1080. It actually was my 1080 for a little while, but he's been using it probably to the better part of 3 years, if not more. Because he got that when I got my 2080 Ti, so I've been using that almost 3 years. And he might have even had it a little bit before then because of timing. Now this, if you guys are wondering, with the RG logo, that is an Arion 10G. That's my 10G network card there. Sad times, if you notice, it's not in the computer. The reasoning for that is, turns out that X99 is not built with triple slot GPUs in mind. That was the not so common thing back when the X99 platform was new. So here's, because it's basically meant for 3-way SLI, because so many people ran that. I mean, I did run SLI in the system. I had dual 980s in here, I believe. That's what it was originally built with, if I recall. Then, due to SLI falling out of favor, went to a single 1080. Was actually a better experience in most cases. And Then finally went to the 2080 Ti. Once that was the first card really that you could play 4K with everything on and still get 60 FPS. Because up until my recent monitor upgrades, that's 4K 60 was what my panel would do. And even with DLSS, it could do up near the 144 it's capable of. But in many cases, you don't want to go over that 144 because then you run into other issues. But yeah, so I had to pull out my 10G networking card that was sandwiched between the 2080 Ti, and that is a 750 Ti. And for those of you that don't know, it did have a water block because the 750 Ti is actually first gen Maxwell, and Maxwell is the 900 series, so it's actually second gen with the 900 series. The 750 and 750 Ti were the first gen, and they were really, really popular with the first run through Bitcoin mining because their price performance, even though they were weak cards, their performance to watts was insanely high for the time. And that's why people had water blocks for them, so you can have a crap ton of them and keep them water blocked. I had the water block because I also had a system that was a Pentium Anniversary Edition that was running at or above 5 gigahertz, and that 750 Ti, in a water cooling loop, it was like a 240 mil rad or something. It was just for chuckles and giggles, and overclocking fun. Or if you break either of those, you're not too worried. That's the 750 Ti from EVGA, where they put like a cooler that was way too powerful on it, where even at idle, at max load on a 750 Ti with the max overclock, with all the sliders maxed out, the fans never came off idle. They even had to put a firmware update out later that lowered the minimum fan speed because of that, which is kind of funny. But there is the 3080 Ti. If it looks upside down, well, that, guys, is because my whole computer is upside down compared to what you're used to. That's what you get with a custom computer case. But yeah, I really, really could use. I'm trying to wait for Zen 3 Threadripper, and then hopefully that's still using DDR3 because it's 128 gigs of 3200 Trident Z in there. Hopefully it's still using DDR3, DDR4, so I can just pass that over to the new system. This CPU block, really, it's a nice one. It's like a Swift-Tech Heritage. Very nice block, not optimized really for X99 though. The size of the block versus the size of the cooling patch versus the size of the CPU for X99. My CPU's always run a bit hot. And I bet you I could overclock it a little bit further if I had a better optimized block for my CPU. But that'll obviously get swapped out if I go to a Threadripper block. And as I said, I had to pull my 10 gig Ethernet, which would have been right here, because this is a chonky, beefy card. I think they claim this isn't a triple slot card, it's hitting my 750 Ti, or dang nearly. So this is definitely a triple slot card. I don't think, versus the reference version of 3080 Ti, I don't think you're going to run any issues with this EVGA FTW3 because this is using the 3090 cooler. The NVIDIA cheaped out a bit and used the 3080 cooler on the 3080 Ti, even though it's using the more powerful core and everything. So if you're actually going to be using the air cooler on this, buy one of the 3080 Ti's that use the 3090 cooler, not one of the 3080 Ti's that uses the maybe they cheaped out a bit and use the 3080 cooler. Now a lot of these brands use the 3090 cooler even on a 3080 already, so you might not have to worry about that. And yes, my rear fan is still not plugged in. I found the cable though; it's down there. Now, I mean, we're basically running an open test bench until I get my loop fixed. I gotta get a water block, so if you guys have any suggestions for what water block I should go with, I have a EK for what's going to replace that. If you're running, the other reason why I have to get rid of the 750 Ti is 700 series are going to be dropped. As of the last driver update will be the 470 driver, which is the one coming up next. Now, technically, as I said, that 750 Ti is like closer to a 900 series card, or actually more of an 800 series card, which didn't exist on desktop except on OEMs. But I don't know how they're going to treat that. Like, realistically, they should still support it because there was never I guess there was a 950, but you know what I mean, like, so like that's really a low end 900 or 800 series card, but I don't want to risk it, and I do have. I have that 1080 reference, which I have a water block for, or the water block I bought was actually bought for the 750 Ti, 1070 Ti reference card. So I might trade that out to Squeers, and then he'll have a 1080 instead of a 1070 Ti. And that's an EVGA superclock card, but it uses a reference PCB, which might be a bit better because then they'll talk better over precision. So let me know what you guys think about that. But yeah, either way, I can't have 10 gig till I get water block in there because, well, you can see there's no freaking room. Another thing to note is, here, I'll show you my setup. Here is my monitor setup right there. Left side, 3 XG27UQs from Asus. The 4K, 144 hertz, 10-bit HDR panels. And then over here we have an older ProArt. That's a 1200p, 1920 by 1200. I think it's a PA248Q. It's just an 8-bit because it's only on 750 Ti. I can't really handle more. And then up here is a PA238Q. So the 1080p 23-inch, and I specifically have it running HDMI because if I ever need to do any troubleshooting, also this this monitor is really designed to be like a like check your stuff before you put it on the web monitor because it's only 8-bit, not like 8-bit FRC or 10-bit, just standard 8-bit. So it's kind of like, hey, go do it on your nice 1440p or 4K monitor, and then check it on here because this is like the best end of what your average person will have, and it's just 1080p. And when you do HDMI, it does even do like 23 hertz and stuff like that, like more TV stuff. Now this is old. This is like the second ProArt display ever made. First, I do have the first one, the PA246Q. It's hanging down over there. That's gonna be, I can't get rid of it. That was my original IPS monitor, so it's probably gonna be the monitor for the server. Quite overkill, but you know, don't want to really get rid of it, and nobody's gonna want it because of how old it is. But the reason why it's important for the PA238, and Bitwidth has run into this. This is HDMI. Whenever you're putting in new hardware testing stuff, if possible, always use, you don't necessarily have to use HDMI. It seems to be more compatible, but use a 1080p monitor, and HDMI seems to have less issues, but I popped it into the 3080 Ti, like only one monitor also when popping in the new card. I didn't just plug in 5 on first boot. However, what I wanted to bring up was even with a driver that's only one version old that didn't support 3080 Ti, once it hit Windows, I had no screen, nothing. And on X99, you don't have integrated graphics, so if I had not had that 750 Ti in there, I really should have upgraded my driver before switching the card. So think about that. If you're putting in a new card that requires a new driver, update the driver maybe before you swap cards. You may want to do a clean reinstall after, but at least you can see. Had I not had that 750 Ti that I could quick unplug the HDMI and plug it into, I wouldn't have even been able to see the desktop to be able to install a new driver. So otherwise, if you guys have integrated graphics, you could have swapped over to that. But yeah, I would have. It looked like Windows actually hung or blue screened because I couldn't get to the sign-in page. But as you can see, now we're working. I just swapped over that 750 Ti or the HDMI over there, got the driver downloaded and installed, and we're up and running. Let me get to some benchmarks.